Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rundown. I will be your host today, Craig DeLuz, coming at you from the West Coast, the left coast, behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sierras. And today is Monday Fun Day.
Hey, stop what you're doing, cause I'm about to ruin the image of me that you're used to. I look money, a king bee making honey, see? Deep state, I hope you're ready for me. Now gather round, I'm the new sheriff in town. All my people rise up and stand your ground. Now drink up all the Diet Coke you got on your shelf. So just let me introduce myself, my name is Trump D. I like my mashed potatoes lumpy. Fake news, oh how I like to punk thee. That little sniper on the slow tin, he took a shot but he missed me. I don't fall, y'all, I'm like the ever-ready bunny. Still going strong and spunky. So put on your big boy pants. Come on, let's do the dance.
The Trumpy dance is your chance to do the Trump.
Come on, do the Trumpty Trump. Come on and do the Trumpty Trump. Check me out, y'all. We do the Trumpty Trump. Just watch me do the Trumpty Trump. Yeah. Do you know what I'm doing? We do the Trumpty Trump. Come on, everybody do the Trumpty Trump. It's time to do the Trumpty Trump.
That's right, folks. We're doing the Trumpty Trump once again because, as has been noted, America is still winning, and we're winning largely because, well, President Trump is president. And it's not just President Trump, but he is the symbol. It is the fact that some common sense, some normality is it's winning over the crazy left. And I know when you think of President Trump, when you think of Donald Trump, you don't think of normal because he's really kind of different. I would never. Normal is not a word that I would normally put on him, but I'll tell you what, he's bringing common sense, or as I like to call it, uncommon sense. He's bringing it back into play in our public policy, and we'll talk about that a little bit because there's a lot of stuff going on here in the news today, and we're going to have a good time with it. But before we do that, we're going to do what we always do. We're going to start off with a quick shout out to our sponsors. We're going to start with Hitman Industries. They sell rifle and pistol caliber barrels. They're available for you to purchase at any length. All you have to do is go to their website, hitmanindustries.net. If you've purchased an AR in the last few years, there's a good chance you already have one of their barrels. Now, they don't just have AR barrels. They also have shotgun barrels and all different types of barrels. So you want to go there and check them out. If you're doing a rebuild, or maybe you're just looking to do you're looking to do a rebuild or a brand new build, start with a quality barrel from Hitman Industries. Next, we have the folks over at California Republican Assembly, working to help elect conservatives at all level of government, from school board all the way up to President of the United States. Ronald Reagan once referred to CRA as the conscience of the Republican Party. Please visit their website, and you can get it on discount today. So go there, check them out, spend some money with them. And then finally, if you're looking for tactical gear, outdoor gear, you're looking for cold weather gear, hot weather gear, you name it, you can find anything you're looking for, except the gun, at uscombatgear.com. They specialize in group sales, so you can get your group together, you can get your agency together. Get on over there. They have a huge selection. They have the best customer service available on the market. Please check them out today. Once again, the place where you can find all things tactical except the gun, that would be uscombatgear.com. All right, unfortunately, it's only going to be us today. Mike is out and about doing his thing and getting his entrepreneur thing on. So, Mike, missing you today, buddy. But you know what? We're going to have a good time nonetheless, which means basically we're taking your comments. I'm looking for your comments. I want the dialogue. I need the dialogue. If you're watching the show right now, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, you're watching us on Rumble, you're watching us on Twitter, you're watching us on YouTube, on Facebook. We're taking your comments. I'm looking right over here, and if I find a comment to be interesting, I will go ahead and I will share it with our audience. Our only requirement is that it be interesting. You don't have to agree with me, because you know what? It's actually better when you disagree with me, because it's a little more interesting. And just know this, if you do decide to disagree, we do reserve the right to mock you.
Oh, wow. Is that a mockingbird?
Man, is that a mockingbird? Is that a mockingbird?
Yeah, we do reserve the right to mock you. Not saying, just saying. So anyway, go ahead and give us a comment. Let us know. Hey, if nothing else, just let us know, where you're watching us from, and let us know if you what you think of the program. In any case, we're going to start here, and as you noted from the title, as it came across your screen, the government shutdown is, well, it's coming to an end, or should be coming to an end. A number of purple state Democrats have voted with Republicans to reopen the government. Here is the story as being reported by our friends over at, well, I don't know about our friends, but definitely by the folks over at NBC News.
Good evening. I'm Jessica Layton in New York. There is breaking news tonight on the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. Let's go live now to Capitol Hill, where the Senate has just taken the first step to end the record-long government shutdown, 40 days and counting. Senators voting to pass a new bill proposed by Republicans that would fund the government through January 30th. Now, this bill still needs to go through the House, and it is not yet clear whether House Democratic leaders are on board with this deal. Now, the bill notably does not include an extension of expiring Affordable Care Act subsidies, which, as you know, was a major sticking point and still is for Democrats. Democrats instead settling for a promise that the Senate will vote on a bill for that next month, two sources telling NBC News tonight. Let's go straight to NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles. Ryan, good evening. Let's talk about what this procedural vote means and what is in the bill, or perhaps more notably, what is not in this bill.
So this is the first step in what will be a relatively long process to finally get this bill over the finish line and then eventually get to President Trump's desk, and then the government will be back open. The Senate is a very laborious place. It takes a long time for legislation to work its way through the Senate, but essentially this was the most important hurdle. It demonstrated that there were 60 Senate Republicans and Democrats that were willing to vote yes on a package that would get the government back open. They'll go through these procedural hurdles over the next couple of days, depending on how many senators want to hold the process up. It could be wrapped up as soon as Monday. It could take until Wednesday or Thursday of next week. And then, of course, the House will have to return to Washington and vote on it as well. There's no guarantee that it will pass in the House. But given the fact that Republicans in the Senate were in favor of this, President Trump has signaled optimism as it relates to it. It would be very surprised if House Republicans didn't get on board. Now, in terms of your second question as to what is in this bill and what is not in this bill, the most important thing it does is reopen the government. It funds all government programs and agencies through the end of January. Three agencies, including military construction and agriculture, Department of Agriculture, will be funded through the full fiscal year, which would go into September. It would also fully fund the SNAP program through the end of September. And it would also claw back some of those job cuts that were handed down by the administration at the beginning of the shutdown, which was a response to the shutdown. It would guarantee those folks who lost their jobs at the beginning of the shutdown would get their jobs back. And also, every federal worker who has lost out on pay over this 41-day, what could end up being a 45 or 46-day shutdown, will get all of that back pay as a result of it.
Okay, so here's the deal. What has happened here is really quite simple. Democrats, their main thing was they wanted ACA subsidies. They wanted basically for the government to subsidize the Affordable Care Act. You know, that thing that was supposed to, in and of itself, make healthcare affordable, but actually didn't. Yeah, that they want to get that back. They want to get that subsidy back. So, and what's funny is the original subsidy, the subsidy that the Democrats put in place with a sunset, wasn't even really about, I mean, never really, and they kind of ignored this. It never really addressed the issue that the ACA never really made healthcare affordable. What they said was, oh, well, because of COVID, people aren't going to be able to afford their premiums, so let's subsidize it. And so now that COVID is over and, you know, we're basically back to full employment, there's no reason why people should need those subsidies, except they do. They do, because the ACA has done nothing to make healthcare affordable. They do because the not the Obama era, but I could call it Obama because he's really Biden. Biden is actually Obama too. But the Biden era inflation that increased costs dramatically played a huge role in increasing the cost of living for most Americans. And so now we're still seeing the cost of the ACA go up and up and up and up. You know, the Affordable Care Act, which should be called actually the Not So Affordable Care Act, or the Inaffordable Care Act is what it should be called. Now, the reason why many Republicans are against this is because they really they want the American people to see that the Affordable Care Act is actually not affordable. They really want them and they really kind of need them to see that, because what's happened is we basically had 4 years of subsidies that have not kept the premiums down. Keep in mind, it hasn't kept the premiums down. It's just meant that the end user is paying less. The balance of those premiums have been paid by the taxpayers through this subsidy. And the American people don't realize that. They think, oh, yeah, the Affordable Care Act is making healthcare affordable. No, it's not. Healthcare costs are still going up. Health insurance costs, what the premiums cost, is still going up. The difference is that you and I have been paying not just our increases in premiums, but we've been paying the increase in premiums for people on Obamacare. And, if we really want to reduce the cost of healthcare, and this is one of the things, by the way, I'm sincerely hoping, because, I had someone ask me about this, and they're like, well, what are the Republican proposals? And I've seen the proposals. I've seen one here, and I've seen one here, and I've seen one here, but it's hard to find a really comprehensive proposal out there where it's like everything in one. The problem is this, is that number one, there is no silver bullet to reducing healthcare costs. But where Democrats are trying to do is they're trying to do it by, they call it reducing healthcare insurance costs, but the reality is what they're doing is they're subsidizing it, and they're subsidizing it with taxpayer dollars. And that doesn't do anything to reduce the cost. In fact, the more government money you throw at a problem, the worse it gets. Just ask the state of California when it comes to homelessness. We spend billions in order to increase homelessness in California. Whenever the government starts throwing money at a problem, you bring out the agencies that quote unquote claim to, well, they claim to want to fix that area, but what they do is they work in that area. And by working in that area, they mean they're going to spend the government money that you give them. And they're going to make sure that money is spent. They're not going to tell you how. They're not going to be able to correlate it to actually coming up with an end product, but they're definitely going to tell you that they're going to spend that money. And that's exactly what's going on here, folks. Now, what you are likely to see, because one of the things they did agree on a vote. I guarantee you that the president is going to sit down with these folks. And what you're going to see is this. You're going to see an extension of some subsidies. I'm just, once again, I'm spitballing. I'm trying to be Nostradamus here. I'm trying to put on my public policy hat. You're going to see, and in exchange for those, you're going to get some reforms, some healthcare reforms. You're going to get some things that are actually going to reduce healthcare costs. If Republicans are smart, that is what they will do. Now, I hear you. You're like, why extend the subsidies? Because you know what? Politics, to a certain degree, is a zero-sum game. And sometimes you got to give a little to get a little. And if we can continue some of the subsidies in order to get some real reforms, it's something we got to take a look at. But once again, I'm talking real reforms in exchange for temporary extension of subsidies. Because I believe that when you do that, you're going to help to drive those healthcare costs down, or at least keep them from increasing the way that they've been going. And I think then Republicans can actually then, going into the 2026 election year, actually talk about how they are working to address affordability. One of the reasons why some of these Democrats were willing to cave on a vote is because, well, if we can get the Republicans on board voting, or get on record voting against the subsidies, well, then they're against affordability. They're against making America more affordable. So that's why they feel comfortable on that. Once again, their goal is not to solve the issue. Their goal is to have the issue for the next election. And I think that if Republicans play this right, they can not only help to address the issue and make it better, but they can also own the issue for the next election. Anyway, so that's going to be an interesting one. Some people are like, well, one of the things he's doing is they're giving back the money or they're hiring back the people that Trump laid off and the people who got furloughed. And where's the president going to be on this? Well, this is what he had to say about it.
I don't know what happened to Marjorie. She's a nice woman, but I don't know what happened. She's lost her way, I think. But I have to view the presidency as a worldwide situation, not locally. I mean, we could have a world that's on fire where wars come to our shores very easily if you had a bad president. We had a horrible president, and we ended up with Russia, Ukraine, and we ended up with other disasters, too. Don't forget.
Okay, clearly I pulled the wrong quote, but basically what he said was, look, if they strike a deal, I'm gonna support the deal. You know, even though, yeah, some of the employees that he laid off are gonna get hired back. Yeah, workers are gonna get their back pay. His attitude is, look, if they strike a deal and we get the government back open, I'm gonna reopen the government. Now, here's what I'll have to say on that. I think that's always what he planned. I really do believe that was always what he planned, because what he did was he gave them something where they can get a win. They lost because he had a right to furlough those employees. He had a right to, I mean, when you shut down the government, when you refuse to fund it, you empower the executive to do what he's got to do to cut costs. So he was well within his authority to do exactly what he did. Well, now guess what? Now they get to declare a win. They're like, look, we got these federal employees their jobs back and we got them back pay. Once again, I believe he always planned that. I believe that was always going to be the case. And it gave them an opportunity. It gave Democrats an opportunity to have a win. So anyway, whatever. I don't know what y'all think about that, but that's my perspective. That's what I believe turned out to be the case. And I think it was a good selection for him. I think it was a good option for him. Once again, the government looks to be reopening, and I am also, though, very, very much looking forward to I'm very much looking forward to them sitting down and discussing the affordability of healthcare, how we actually make healthcare affordable. And I think that if Democrats are serious about that, they will take him up on this opportunity. And what they'll likely do is they'll agree to the affordability measures, and they will wind up agreeing to a temporary extension of some subsidies. What those look like, I do not know, but I'm willing to bet you that's how things are going to go down. All right, next in the news, Trump came up with an idea that I have to say, I get it, but I disagree with it. All right. And here's what the proposal is. He is basically proposing a 50-year mortgage. That's right. Reporting from Breitbart, Trump proposing game-changing 50-year mortgage to tackle home prices. The Trump administration is indeed working on a plan to introduce 50-year mortgages for home buyers. Federal Housing Finance Agency Director Bill Pulte announced Saturday. Thanks to President Trump, we are indeed working on the 50-year mortgage, a complete game changer, Pulte wrote in a statement in the social platform X. It says here, Pulte, here, this is the thing he did here. He says, thanks to President Trump, we are indeed working on the 50-year mortgage, a complete game changer. And here they are talking about how President Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, FDR, who was no friend of the free market, and now you've got Trump proposing a 50-year mortgage. It says here, the director included a graphic from the Truth Social post by President Trump from earlier in the day, showing a portrait of former President Franklin D. Roosevelt next to one of the current president with mortgage lengths. Roosevelt established a fixed-rate 30-year mortgage as a part of the New Deal to help Americans recover from the Great Depression. Trump campaigned on creating housing opportunities for younger, first-time home buyers, but the U.S. has seen housing prices and mortgage rates remain high. The average age of a first-time home buyer reached all-time high of 40 in 2025, according to a report of the National Association of Realtors, way up from the past decades, where the typically Americans in their 20s and 30s. Anyway, So that's what he's proposing now. Here you have Marjorie Taylor Greene. Her statement: "I don't like 50-year mortgages as a solution to the housing affordability crisis, and it ultimately rewards banks, mortgage lenders, and home builders, while people pay far more interest over length of time." I had to say this: MTG is right on this one. That's one of the reasons why I take an issue with it. Um, It's a 50-year mortgage versus this is from Pro America Politics. A 50-year mortgage versus a 30-year mortgage would lower mortgage payment by almost $500 a month on a $500,000 house. That would really help young people get their home. Now, I'm gonna be real with you though. What they're not telling you is how much more you are going to wind up paying in interest for that very same house. Uh, how you finance it does not. It may address the house payment, but it doesn't address why cost of the house is so high. In places where housing costs are incredibly high, it's not an accident. It's not an accident because the policies that are put in place in places like California, in places like New York, they are put in place to make it very, very difficult to build housing. In the state of California, for example, you pay over $100,000 in fees and whatnot, and in compliance before you can put a single shovel in the ground in order to build a single unit of a single unit of single family housing. It's incredibly expensive. Then you add on top of that the taxes that are on top of it, the property taxes, the Melrose fees, and all of the fees and everything around it goes like that. And they get you by selling you on this $500 less. But they don't tell you that it's almost going to double what you're going to wind up paying in the end for that very same home. Because when it's amortized over a long period of time, after 10 years, you've hardly paid anything. You've hardly paid any of the principal. You're still paying a whole bunch. You're still overwhelming majority of your payment is going to be interest. The overwhelming majority, right? Let me tell you this. They said the exact same thing about leasing when it came to leasing cars. They said, well, if you do a lease, then you buy. The idea was that was how they learned that's how they made it so that they could keep pushing up the cost of cars, which now cost as much as homes used to cost. But they push up the cost of cars because they deal with the financing. They just stretch out the amount of the payments for a longer period of time. So you wind up paying much, much more money for that car. In this particular case for a house, you wind up basically decreasing the cost or increasing the cost of the house over the long term by reducing the payments in the short term by stretching it out. That is a bad idea. Deal with the actual things that are causing the cost. The increases in energy costs, right? Deal with the materials issue. The fact that we create or that we produce or that we get so few of the materials. We have the natural resources right here in the United States to be able to build homes, but we tend to want to get it from other places, and it drives up the cost. Get past the environmental regulation. Here's how we know. You know how we know that the environmental regulation is making it almost impossible to build in California? Because even Democrats have admitted it. That's why they said, look, we're going to scrap what's called CEQA, right? Which is the key environmental law here in California. In California, we're going to scrap that for new home builds in the areas that were affected by the wildfires. They scrapped it because they're like, we'll never be able to build another home. We'll never be able to build these homes, or it'll be too expensive to rebuild them. And even with that, there have been less than a dozen new builds or rebuild permits approved. If you want to make it more affordable, change the policies that have made it unaffordable. And here's the other thing, quite frankly, is that if the places like New York and California don't want to change their policies, well, then the employers, the places with the people with the jobs, yeah, you need to go places where your employees can afford to live. You need to move those companies, and that's, by the way, is exactly what's happening in California. It's exactly what's happening in New York. People are moving to places where where their employees can afford to live. And if your employee don't want to go, then he don't want a job with you anyway. But the reality is to say, I want you to pay me more and I want you to keep your business here. I'm sorry, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. So anyway, you're going to start to see this sort of stuff happening. But this idea of a 50-year mortgage, bad idea. Horrible idea. Absolutely, positively horrible idea. I would just tell you right now, I've learned a long time ago the best thing to do in life. First of all, debt is a tool. It is a tool that can be used because I don't know anybody who can afford to buy a house cash, or at least not right now. But I can tell you this: I do know that when my wife and I decided to get rid of all of our debt, we eventually got rid of all of our debt, and now we live. The only thing we owe on is our home. Right? That's the only thing we own. And that will be paid off within the next 8 to 10 years. It'll be paid off when I retire. Right? So as that is paid off, actually within the next 10 years. So as that is paid off, then, when we go to buy our next home, which is probably be a downsize, because we have a relatively good sized house here. Of course, we got plenty of people living with us. So, but by the time we retire and it's just the two of us, we're going to get a smaller place. Yeah, we're going to go buy a home cash. Right? If you want to live right, you want to get your home paid off, right? Before you retire, you want to get your home paid off. You don't want to have a house payment when you're retired. Well, if you have a 50-year mortgage, guess what? Chances are you're going to have a mortgage when you retire, which is going to affect your ability to retire. So yeah, don't no. I'm sorry. I'm just not a big fan. And here's the thing, and I get it. I'm also a free market person. Free market says, well, if there's a market out there for it and people want to do it, then, well, all I will say is this, is that the biggest problem with it is that most people, I hate to say this, they don't understand finances. They don't understand the power of compound interest, how it works for you and how it works against you. If you are an investor, meaning you put money into the bank and you invest, then the power of compound interest, the magic of compound interest can be your best friend. But if you're a person who goes into debt, if you're a person who borrows money in order to live a lifestyle that you have not earned yet, compound interest can be your worst enemy. I will just tell you right now, and we've been in that situation where we were paying for stuff that we had already gotten, we had already earned, we had already done all that, and now we're paying the interest on it. When we got rid of all of our debt, when we tightened our belts and we said, look, we're just going to live, and right now what I do is if I put it on my card and I pay the card right off. Now, what I found was when we started doing that, we started not putting stuff on the cards, when we started living debt-free, I got a lot more lifestyle out of the same amount of money, a lot more lifestyle. So I want to encourage you folks, this 50-year mortgage is, I know he's trying to do. I know what he's trying to do. But yeah, this puts more money in the pockets of the banks. It puts more money in the home builders, because the home builders don't have to figure out how do we make our homes more affordable. It all the way around. It does not help. It does not truly help. It's a short-term fix that will only continue to push prices of homes up in the long run. So, Mr. President, I get what you're saying. I get what you're doing. Just don't agree with you on this one. All right. Well, this is next one here. It says shots fired at a border patrol in Chicago. This was what here's, well, let me read the story and tell you what happened. This is a story over at Breitbart. It says shot fired at border patrol in Chicago after officials lie about daycare abduction. So let me read this for you real quick. It says shots rang out in broad daylight Friday as a black Jeep driver opened fire on Border Patrol agents near 26th and Kinsey in Chicago. Agitators hurled bricks and paint cans at federal vehicles while the shooter fled the scene. The attack comes just days after Chicago and Illinois officials falsely claimed agents stormed a daycare an outright lie debunked by surveillance footage as violence against law enforcement surges. Democrat leaders continue to gaslight the public and shield the lawless. The shooter remains at large. Department of Homeland Security announced an investigation into the incident in Chicago near 26th Street and Kinsey Avenue. While Border Patrol agents were carrying out a targeted enforcement operation, an unknown male driving a black Jeep fired shots at agents and fled the scene. Officials say bystanders threw paint cans and bricks at patrol vehicles to keep them from pursuing the shooter. The shooter remains at large Saturday. Commander at large Gregory Bovino posted agents shot at vehicular assaults, physical assaults, impeding violent mobs, vehicular blockades, illegal aliens. This was what agents were up against for hours today as they once again successfully conducted Title VIII immigration enforcement in Chicago. More to come. It says photos captured by Chicago Tribune journalist Armando I. Sancha show the continued violence in Little Village of Chicago, including what appears to be a masked agent pointing his service weapon in self-defense. Right? I want to find the part about the lie. Here we go. Immigration Customs Enforcement officials said U.S. Representative Mike Quigley, a Democrat from Illinois, deliberately misrepresented the facts surrounding the arrest of a Colombian illegal alien arrested at a Chicago area preschool. Breitbart, Texas reported on Wednesday the illegal alien and her male friend driver fled from ICE officers and ran into the daycare. Quigley falsely claimed that ICE took a preschool teacher without a warrant in front of children at a daycare center in Cook County District. ICE officials responded, calling out Quigley for deliberately spreading false information about the arrest. It turns out the woman was an illegal alien from Colombia who had been given a work permit by Biden administration in 2023. Fox News' Bill Melugin reported. During the press conference on Wednesday, Quigley told reporters that ICE agents followed the teacher into the school without a warrant and abducted her in front of her students. Now, do I believe that he intentionally lied in order to get people riled up? No. Do I believe that he did not bother to actually get the facts of the case on the ground? Do I believe that he was so interested in pushing a narrative that he believed that agents would do this? Yes. Do I believe that he was negligent? And to be quite honestly, I believe verging on criminal negligence. When you are an elected official and you start pushing out lies like this that are in fact meant to incite, that's exactly what they are. They're meant to incite. I believe you put yourself on the verge of being criminally negligent. And that's what his thing was. He wanted to make sure that people were angry and were upset over what these folks were doing. And mind you, this was a person who jumped out of their car, fled into a preschool. So in other words, this was some stranger, some person who had no business in the daycare. Had no business there. It wasn't their daycare. They weren't a teacher. They were someone trying to barricade themselves inside of a daycare with someone else's children. And they arrested them. But that's not what, by the way, they arrested them in front of the children because they were hiding out using the children as shields. Now, I don't know that they knew that it was a daycare. All they knew was, they were trying to hide. But once again, you have the left inciting violence. And that's what all of this violence is going on. All of this has come as a result of Democrats and the media, which is pretty much one and the same, pushing out this false narrative. And you now know it is a false narrative. And almost none of them, I haven't seen any corrections out there. I haven't seen anybody pointing out that this information, that the information was incorrect. Oh, oops. But once again, you have elected officials who are pushing this stuff out as if it's fact. And they're inciting violence. And so now you have officers who are in physical danger. They're being shot at. They're having things thrown at them. And if you don't think that having a brick thrown at you is a big deal, let someone throw a brick at you. Just for the sake of it, if you don't believe it's a big deal, have someone right now go out in the street, say, hey, excuse me, can you throw this brick at me? And you tell me what you think. You tell me if you think that is violence or not. I'm willing to bet you get hit in the head with one brick, you're going to decide, yeah, that was pretty violent. So anyway, just so you know, if you want to know, and by the way, for people who are, for some of the agents who don't wear masks, where you have people out there on the left, the supporters or the anti-ICE protesters, they are basically doxing these people. They're finding out who they are. They're doxing them. They're giving up their home addresses. They're harassing their families. That's why they're wearing masks. That is why they're wearing masks. Because once again, people on your side are engaged in those sorts of tactics. And you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything to call them out on it. You're not doing anything. Absolutely nothing. And then you wonder why they're doing it. If you want to know who's to blame, I would take a long look in the mirror. All right, here's another one. Oh, here's a good one. Okay, BBC boss resigns over video edit of Trump's speech. Now, I remember when January 6th happened, and I remember everybody talking about he was inciting violence. And I went back and I not only did I read the speech multiple times, and it was a long speech. Oh my God, it was a long speech. I had no desire to watch it live because I just not a big fan of Donald Trump's speeches because they're long, they're rambling. You don't particularly get anything new or insightful out of them. They're a bunch of Trumpisms and Trump talking trash about folks. And some people are interested in that, and that's fine. If you like listening to Donald Trump, fine. My point is I didn't listen to the speech when it first happened. We had our own event here in Sacramento, and a bunch of people spoke. I was one of the speakers who spoke here in Sacramento at the event. But the point that I'm making though is I went back and first I read the speech multiple times. Then I went back and I listened to the speech multiple times, and I could not find the segments where he was quote unquote promoting violence. Well, evidently, and BBC, by the way, was not the only ones who did this, but they're the ones who got caught because they did this in a documentary where they actually went and they edited the speech in order to make it sound like Donald Trump was promoting violence. And here's an example of what they did.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
So there was a huge segment. Now, he did say, we're going to fight. But once again, it was taken completely out of context. He said, we're going to go down to the Capitol and fight. That's what their edited video said, right? Now, I know people out there who said, I listened to it. And he said, no, did you listen to the unedited version? Well, if they listened to this, then they thought they heard the unedited version. I would be very curious to know what they think now that they've heard the actual unedited version. I would love to hear what they have to say about that. But in any case, you have a BBC boss who basically said he's the head of news, quit after criticism of Trump documentary edit. It says here the BBC's boss and its head of news quit Sunday following accusations of bias at the British broadcaster, including the way it edited a speech by U.S. President Donald Trump. The publicly funded BBC, which basically makes them the PBS of Great Britain, had been under mounting pressure after an internal report by a former standards advisor, which cited failings in its coverage of the Israel Hamas war, transgender issues, and a speech made by Trump was leaked to the Daily Telegraph newspaper. So, in other words, here you go. Trump welcomed departures, criticizing the two as, quote, very dishonest people after BBC's flagship Panorama program edited two parts of one of his speeches together, so it appeared to be encouraging the Capitol Hill riot on January 2021. So, in other words, Donald Trump's like, yeah, well, first of all, he is still considering taking them to court, but I think your point's made. If they admit that they did it, and I think anyone else who made those edits needs to admit that they did it. Once again, I doubt that. The sad part is, I doubt that many of the people who hate Donald Trump will care. They won't care because they have bought into the lie. We have told them that it's a lie. We have showed them that it's a lie, and yet they still want it. They still would rather believe the lie than believe the truth. I know, crazy. But part of that is a pride thing because no one wants to admit that they've been duped. No one wants to admit it. So I don't know how you get them to change their minds. But there are some people who they hate Donald Trump. They are convinced that America is worse than living in Somalia. They are. They're convinced that America is the worst place in the world to live, which then begs the question, why are you still here? If it is so horrible to live here, nobody's keeping you. Absolutely, positively, nobody's keeping you here. If it's so horrible, go to one of those places. I'll tell you this. So I was playing golf with a family member, and it was funny because there were total of 6 of us, and 5 of us are Republican or center right, and he was the one young man. He's planning on going to school, and he's going to be he's going to major in public policy or poli-sci. And I asked him, so where are you on the political spectrum? And he said, well, I'm a Democrat. And then come to find out, well, he actually likes some of the policies or some of the proposals of Karl Marx. I said, you're not a Democrat. You're either a democratic socialist or you're a neo-Marxist. Well, I don't like all of it, but I like the outcomes, the goals that he sets. I said, it's kind of like this. I said, in this game of golf, I have a goal. All right. My goal is it's only going to take me one shot to knock the ball into the hole on every hole. And I'm going to shoot a round of 18. That's going to be my round. Now, you like that goal, right? What's the reality? How is that exactly going to work out? Right? I haven't told you how it's going to work out because I don't know how it's going to work out. In fact, has it ever worked out in history? No, it has never worked out in history. Every time someone's tried it, it's failed. And you know what? I can say the same exact thing about Marxism. I can say the same exact thing about every single principle within Marxism. I said, if you want to know how bad an idea Marxism actually is, just go read a biography about Karl Marx, who he was, how he made a living, and how he came about deciding all of the things that he decided in his Communist Manifesto. And when you do, you will find out, you'll realize just how bad an idea Marxism actually is. So I'm working on the young man. I told him, I said, tell you what, I will leave you alone and I'll let you go if you will just do one thing for me. Just one thing. There's 2 books I'm going to recommend you read. All right, 2 books I'm going to recommend you read. I really need you to read at least one of them. One is going to be the biography of Thomas Sowell, because I want you to hear Thomas Sowell was a Marxist. He started off as a Marxist, supporting Marxism, and life experience taught him that Marxism was a bad idea. Anyway, one of the most renowned economists. And the other book I'm going to have you read is Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell. I said he will explain to you the difference between Marxism and socialism, Marxism, or between socialism and communism, I mean, and capitalism or free market economy is the actual term. He'll explain to you the difference, and he'll give you tons of examples as to why the free market works so much better. And it's not just about those two topics, but it'll give you an understanding of economics that most people don't have. And the reason why they fall for the okey doke of the democratic socialists or the Marxist tendencies or the big government Democrats is because they don't understand how economics works. Because when you do, you realize that all their policies do is set you up for failure. That's it. That's all. All right, folks, that now brings us to our parting shots. Parting shots are brought to you by Hog Holsters. Just go to hogholsters.com. Use the discount code The Rundown. All caps, no spaces. Get your hog holster today. All of our parting shots will be brought to you today by our friends over at the Babylon Bee. Fake news that you can trust. We're going to start here. Democrats agree to end shutdown in exchange for a 15% off coupon to Cracker Barrel. Yeah, pretty much that would be more than what they actually got. Because if you look at what happened from the very beginning, all they really got was the government shut down for, 6 weeks. That's all they really got. Not much more than that. Oh, here we have another one. Trump unveils new eternal mortgage. Yeah, that means you're always going to be paying on it. That's this thing called rent. It, although, may be like rent control. Or actually, we already do have something like that. It's called a interest-only loan. It's just usually interest-only loans have an end date. This one has no end date. Anyway, back to the shutdown. Congress prepares to pivot from doing nothing because of the shutdown to doing nothing because, well, they're Congress. This is sad because it actually does play to a very serious thing in that it's been a while since Congress has actually done their jobs. I will say the House, even under Democrats, does pass legislation. They do. It's just when it gets over to the Senate refuses to take it up. So I'll give them a little bit of credit on that. Both parties, I'll give them a little bit of credit on that. And then finally, liberals trying to remember what they were mad about last week. Because it's always something, right? It's the Epstein files. Well, wait, they weren't upset about the Epstein files before. There's affordability, but it's their policies that made the country unaffordable. It's people living, it's the homeless crisis, but 42% of all new homeless cases are illegal immigrants. Oh, it's immigration, but they're the ones that are just letting people in the country. They have a hard time remembering what they're mad about because generally what they are mad about has almost always been, well, their fault. I know. Tough one to deal with. All right, folks. So that brings us to the end of our show. But before we go, we're going to give one more quick shout out to our sponsors. We're going to start with Hitman Industries, rifle and pistol caliber barrels available for you to purchase at hitmanindustries.net. We got the California Republican Assembly, the conscience of the Republican Party. Please check them out at cragop.org. We've got the best in concealed carry tactical holsters available on the market at hogholsters.com. That's HAWG holsters.com, helping Americans wear guns. And then finally, we've got the place where you can find all things tactical except the gun, uscombatgear.com. All right, folks, that's going to be it for today's program. We will be back tomorrow on Taco Tuesday. Till then, you have fun, stay safe, encourage your friends to like and share the program. Hurry, please let them know this here be the spot. This is the spot to hang out. Anyway, encourage them. We'll talk to y'all later. See you mañana.